You know what's crazy? There are things you do every single day that could have gotten your grandparents thrown in jail. And the only reason they're legal now is because rich people wanted to do them too. Let me show you how money literally rewrites the law. Number 10. Playing poker with your friends. Picture this. It's Friday night. You've got some buddies over. There's pizza, some drinks, and someone suggests poker. Sounds normal, right? Well, for most of American history, that friendly poker game in your living room was a crime, even if you were playing for pocket change. Gambling laws were insanely strict. Police would raid private homes and arrest everyone at the table. Your aunt playing bingo at church? Also technically illegal in many places. But here's where it gets interesting. Rich people loved their poker nights. Wealthy businessmen had entire rooms in their mansions dedicated to card games. They'd bet thousands of dollars while smoking cigars and making business deals. Did police raid those games? Almost never. And when online poker became huge in the early 2000s, millions of regular people started playing. The government freaked out and banned it. But then casinos and wealthy investors realized they were missing out on massive profits. Suddenly, states started legalizing online gambling left and right. Now you can lose your paycheck on a gambling app that's literally advertised during football games. The activity didn't change. The bank accounts of the people doing it did. Number 9. Having a tattoo. There was a time when walking around with visible tattoos could cost you your job, get you kicked out of establishments, and in some places getting tattooed was straight up illegal. New York City banned tattoos from 1961 to 1997. Massachusetts banned them until 2000. South Carolina held out until 2004. The reasoning was that tattoos were associated with criminals, sailors, and generally disreputable people. If you had ink, you were trouble. But then something shifted. Celebrities started getting tattoos. Not just any celebrities, but wealthy actors, musicians, and athletes. Suddenly, tattoos weren't rebellious. They were artistic. They were self-expression. Fashion magazines started calling them body art. Rich kids from good families started getting tattooed at expensive studios that looked more like art galleries than the sketchy shops of the past. Once enough people with money and status had tattoos, the bans disappeared. Now your accountant probably has a sleeve under that button-up shirt. Same tattoos, different tax brackets. Number 8. Women opening a bank account. This one's going to blow your mind. Until the 1960s and 70s, most banks in America wouldn't let a woman open a bank account or get a credit card without her husband's permission. A single woman. Forget about it. Unless she could get her father to co-sign. Women could work, earn money, but controlling that money. That required a man's approval. This wasn't ancient history. This was happening while color TV existed. But wealthy women had ways around it. They had family lawyers, trust funds, and business structures that let them control assets without technically owning them in their own names. Then the women's liberation movement gained steam, and guess who was funding and leading a lot of it? Women from wealthy, educated backgrounds who had the time and resources to fight back. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act passed in 1974, and suddenly women could have their own bank accounts. Not because society had a moral awakening, but because enough women with power and resources demanded it. Number 7. Being left-handed. Okay, being left-handed was never technically illegal, but schools would literally punish kids for using their left hand. Teachers would hit students with rulers, tie their left hands behind their backs, or force them to sit on their left hand during class. The idea was that left-handedness was wrong, unnatural, maybe even evil. This wasn't some medieval torture. This was happening in the 1900s. Kids were traumatized for the crime of picking up a pencil with the wrong hand. But then researchers, many from wealthy universities, started publishing studies showing there was nothing wrong with being left-handed. It was just a natural variation. Once educated, wealthy parents learned this. They stopped letting teachers abuse their left-handed children. Those parents had the power to complain, threaten legal action, and actually be heard. By the 1970s, the practice mostly stopped. Left-handed kids could finally just be left-handed. The science was always there. What changed was that rich parents decided their kids shouldn't be tortured over it. Number 6. Wearing jeans. Denim jeans were workwear for miners, farmers, and laborers. They were tough, cheap, and practical. They were also seen as low class. In the 1950s, many restaurants, theaters, and schools banned jeans. You couldn't wear them to work in an office. You definitely couldn't wear them anywhere fancy. Then, in the 1960s and 70s, wealthy college students started wearing jeans as a fashion statement. It was ironic at first, slumming it in workwear while attending expensive universities. But designers noticed. High-end fashion brands started making expensive jeans. Suddenly, denim wasn't just for workers anymore. It was for everyone. By the 1980s, designer jeans cost more than a nice pair of dress pants. The same material that got you kicked out of restaurants was now being sold in boutiques. Today, you can pay $300 for jeans with holes already in them. The fabric didn't change. The price tag did. Number 5, feeding the homeless. In cities across America, it's been illegal to give food to homeless people in public spaces. Laws against feeding the homeless have existed for decades, and many are still on the books. The official reason is always health and safety, but really it's about making homeless people less visible. Regular people trying to help would get fined or arrested. Church groups handing out sandwiches got shut down. But when celebrity chefs and wealthy philanthropists decided to address homelessness, suddenly there were exceptions. Organized charity events with the right permits and publicity became acceptable. The difference between a crime and charity wasn't the action. It was whether you had lawyers and PR people managing it. Some cities have started creating specific zones where feeding the homeless is allowed, usually after wealthy donors and nonprofits pushed for changes. Helping people became legal when the right kind of people wanted to do it. Number 4, boycotting businesses. In the early 1900s, organizing a boycott could get you arrested for conspiracy or restraint of trade. If workers tried to boycott a company that treated them badly, that was illegal. If you convinced your neighbors not to shop somewhere, you could face serious legal trouble. The laws were designed to protect businesses from organized action by regular people. But wealthy activists and educated organizers found ways around it. They had lawyers who could structure boycotts as free speech and consumer choice rather than illegal conspiracy. The civil rights movement used boycotts effectively, but it took years of legal battles funded by donors with deep pockets to establish that boycotts were protected speech. The Montgomery bus boycott worked partly because the organizers could afford good lawyers to fight the legal attacks. Today, boycotts are just another form of protest. We call it cancel culture now, and it happens on Twitter. But it only became legal because people with resources fought to make it so. Number 3, collecting rainwater. In many Western states, collecting rainwater on your own property is illegal or heavily restricted. The reasoning is that water rights are complicated, and someone downstream has a legal claim to that water, even if it falls on your roof. For years, people got fined for having rain barrels. But then wealthy environmentalists and sustainable living advocates started pushing back. They had the money for legal challenges and the platforms to raise awareness. States started creating exemptions for small-scale rainwater collection. Colorado changed its laws in 2009 to allow limited collection. Other states followed. What's interesting is that large agricultural operations often have complex water rights that let them control huge amounts of water, but a homeowner with a bucket was a criminal. Once people with money and influence wanted to collect rainwater for their sustainable homes, the laws started bending. Number 2, using birth control. This one's huge. Birth control was illegal in the United States until 1965 for married couples and 1972 for unmarried people. You could be arrested just for possessing contraceptives. Doctors couldn't prescribe them. Pharmacies couldn't sell them. But wealthy women had access through private doctors who would prescribe birth control for other medical reasons with a wink and a nod. Or they'd travel to Europe where it was legal. Poor women had no such options. They had kids they couldn't afford or risked dangerous illegal procedures. The fight to legalize birth control was led largely by Margaret Sanger, who had wealthy donors funding her cause. The court cases that eventually overturned the bans were backed by organizations with serious money. Once birth control became something that wealthy, educated women openly advocated for, the laws fell. Today it's a basic part of healthcare, but it took decades and a lot of money to make that happen. Number 1, encryption and privacy. When strong encryption first became available to regular people in the 1990s, the government classified it as a weapon. Exporting encryption software was treated the same as selling missiles to foreign countries. If you wanted real privacy in your digital communications, you were basically a criminal. The government wanted backdoor access to everything. But tech companies, many founded by wealthy entrepreneurs, pushed back hard. They had teams of expensive lawyers arguing that encryption was speech protected by the First Amendment. Companies like Apple and Google built encryption into their products by default. Today, end-to-end encryption is normal. Your messages are encrypted. Your data is encrypted. This was only possible because tech companies with enormous resources fought legal battles that regular people never could have won. The government still hates it, but the precedent is set. Privacy became a right when corporations with money decided to fight for it. Here's the thing. None of these laws changed because society suddenly became more enlightened. They changed because people with money and power wanted different rules. Every time you see an old law that seems ridiculous, ask yourself who benefited from that law and who suffered under it. Then ask who had the resources to change it. The game hasn't changed. It's still rigged. We just expanded the guest list a little.